Chapter 1031. Number 47 rose up into the air before flashing toward Tang Wuling like lightning. This was an agility attack system Soulmaster, as well as a 7-ring Soul Sage. It was undoubtedly the case that all of the participants who had progressed to the round robin stage of the finals were the cream of the crop of the world of Soulmasters, and it could even be said that they were also elites among the world of battle armor masters. There was no way that anyone could have made it to this point without suits of 2-word battle armor. Tang Wuling's opponent was extraordinarily fast. Even the worst 7-ring agility attack system Soulmasters could break the sound barrier with their speed, so the distance between them was closed down in a flash. A frosty sensation instantly swept over Tang Wuling's entire body, yet he couldn't even lock down the exact location of his opponent. His opponent was truly astonishingly fast, but so what? Tang Wuling's eyes suddenly lit up, and if one were to look closely, they discovered that his pupils had become vertical. A vicious aura instantly erupted from his body, and he only tapped his foot into the ground in a slight motion before a resounding boom rang out. The ground in a diameter of 30 meters around him caved in almost at the exact same time, and a thunderous dragon's roar rang out as 8 massive dragons emerged from the ground. At the same time, the space within the diameter of 30 meters began to warp and twist, and Tang Wuling's opponent was forcibly revealed as a result. Number 47 appeared to be a woman, and she was holding a pair of green daggers in her hands, both of which were emanating frosty light. In response to the sudden spatial changes around her, Number 47 reacted very quickly, slashing her dagger through the air to create a black spatial rift. As a result, the golden dragon shakes the earth was only able to slow her down rather than immobilize her. She stepped forward and entered the rift, looking as if she were about to disappear from Tang Wuling's field of view in a flash. In contrast with the difficulty he'd been experiencing in his mecha battles, here in the Soulmaster battle discipline, Tang Wuling was already being tipped as one of the hot favorites to become the final champion. He had displayed extremely astonishing combat prowess during the previous 3 elimination rounds, crushing each of his opponents within seconds. As such, he had been extensively researched by his competitors. Number 47 had also reviewed Tang Wuling's battle footage before, but the fact that he was her first opponent of the round robin stage had still left a very bitter taste in her mouth. Thankfully, each group had 2 participants who could progress to the next stage, and she wanted to see if she had a chance at securing victory with her demonic green daggers. Tang Wuling faltered slightly at the realization that his opponent was trying to escape through a spatial rift, but he immediately reacted as he launched his right fist forward. Another dragon's roar erupted, and space collapsed as a black hole appeared in midair. Number 47 let loose a howl of agony as one of her legs, which had just entered the spatial rift, was instantly destroyed by the violent spatial fluctuations. However, she also reacted extremely quickly and immediately relinquished her plan to escape using a spatial rift. At the same time, her 7th soul ring lit up, and her body suddenly shrank, transforming into a green streak of light before instantly hurtling toward Tang Wuling. Her soul spirit was her dual demonic green daggers, and her martial soul true body was the demonic green bird. It was undoubtedly the case that demonic green birds were extremely fearsome and vicious soul beasts, and in the past, Tang Wuling would have had a lot of trouble facing such a martial soul true body. However, he had faced a true demonic green bird before, and ever since it became Yuna's pet, he had developed an extremely in-depth understanding of this creature. Furthermore, he certainly wasn't the person that he once was. Number 47 was placing all of her eggs in one basket with this attack. She had released her martial soul true body and 2-word battle armor almost at the exact same time, and that streak of green light seemed to be capable of piercing through heaven and earth. Tang Wuling remained standing still on the spot. The 8 golden dragons released by the golden dragon shakes the earth virtually instantly appeared before him, right in the path of the demonic green bird. With the enhancements of the suit of 2-word battle armor, the demonic green bird possessed offensive prowess close to that of a tidal Douluo, and this was a kamikaze attack from Number 47. So one golden dragon after another was punctured as the bird drew closer and closer to Tang Wuling. However, she could only see a cold and calm expression in his vicious vertical pupils. Roar. A loud dragon's roar rang out, and a massive golden dragon head appeared in front of Tang Wuling. In the eyes of all of the spectators, it looked as if the demonic green bird had been instantly engulfed. The green figure vanished in a soundless manner, and after that, it never reappeared. The victory goes to Number 33. The first round robin match had concluded in mere seconds, just like all of his previous elimination matches. Tang Wuling withdrew his vicious aura and was teleported out of the competition venue with a contemplative look on his face. His golden dragon roar coupled with his golden dragon vibrational explosion had truly unleashed a devastating attack that had virtually vaporized his opponent's body in an instant. However, this combination attack had expended over half of his soul power and bloodline power. The greater his mastery of the golden dragon vibrational explosion became, the more he came to realize just how terrifying this ability was. The opponent he had just faced was a soul sage who was among the most elite 2-word battle armor masters in the entire federation, yet she was still unable to withstand his bloodline soul skills. His golden dragon shakes the earth had weakened her, and his golden dragon vibrational explosion and golden dragon roar had completely destroyed her. There was also that punch that had shattered space itself. What an intimidating figure. The commentator said in an awestruck voice, will anyone be able to stop Number 33's advancing footsteps? He's only a 6-ring soul emperor, but his combat prowess is downright terrifying. His explosive power is too much for even martial soul true bodies to handle. The other commentator said, he's definitely not your average 6-ring soul emperor. Otherwise, there's no way he could possess this level of combat prowess. At the very least, he has to possess twin martial souls. The other martial soul could be even more powerful than the one he's displayed. His abilities are far more powerful than those of a normal soul emperor, and if you ask me, even without his suit of battle armor, he still possesses at least soul Douluo level combat prowess. And when I say soul Douluo, I mean the most powerful of soul Douluo. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. I'm tipping him to be the final champion. I wouldn't be so quick to jump to conclusions. There are 2 contenders from the 6th and 3rd groups who are also very powerful, and the combat prowess they've displayed definitely aren't inferior to his. Looks like we'll have some thrilling matches coming up. I'm really looking forward to seeing their clashes. Indeed, I can hardly wait. The commentators were full of praise for Number 33 while the audience was completely stunned. Number 33 was becoming more and more badass with each passing match, and a widely renowned nickname had already been coined for him. It was Golden Dragon King. After logging out of the Star Battle.net, Tang Wuling sat down on his bed as usual to meditate and reflect on the match, paying particular attention to his control over his own strength. After breaking his 10th seal, his already enormous strength was almost doubled once again. His Dragon Core and Soul Core resonated with one another, and at this point, his Dragon Core heart was definitely more powerful than his Soul Core. His blood essence was also able to recover at a far faster rate than in the past, and even the amount of energy he'd expended by using the Golden Dragon vibrational explosion had recovered after just a short while. This was what Tang Wuling held in the highest regard. According to his own analysis, after releasing his suit of battle armor, his combat prowess was definitely comparable to that of tidal Douluos who weren't wearing their suits of battle armor, and even his soul skills wouldn't be inferior to theirs by much. As he gradually became more and more familiar with his golden dragon vibrational explosion and fury of the masses, he had improved significantly once again during the past half a month. At the very least, he was much more confident in his chances against Blood 9. At this moment, he suddenly received a call. What's up, Yakshu? Congratulations on winning your first round robin match. Long Yakshu's voice clearly harbored mixed emotions. There was no way that she would fail to recognize who this Number 33 was. To put it more accurately, everyone in the Legion who was familiar with Tang Wuling knew that he was Number 33, but it was exactly because of this that they were even more awestruck by him. Thank you, Tang Wuling said with a smile. He was naturally aware of Long Yakshu's feelings toward him, and it was exactly because of this that he had intentionally been avoiding her outside of the times when he was forging. He already had Yuna, and he didn't want to lead Long Yakshu on and hurt her, so he could only try to distance himself from her. Are you in your dormitory room? Can you come out to see me? I have something I have to tell you, Long Yakshu said in a calm voice. Tang Wuling's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this. What is it? Can't you tell me through this call? No, I have to speak to you face to face, Long Yakshu insisted. All right, wait for me in the resting area. I'll head over right away. After ending the call, Tang Wuling put on his clothes before leaving his room. He had only just arrived in the hall of the Blood God Battalion when he bumped into Blood 9. Blood 9 wore a rather peculiar expression as he looked at Tang Wuling. Wuling, I saw you much earlier. He currently wore a set of senior colonel epaulets, in contrast with Tang Wuling's major general epaulets. Tang Wuling chuckled. Are you scared? Chapter 1032. Blood 9 scoffed. Of course not. However, it looks like I really won't be able to hold back during our next battle. Let's go to the battle net again when the time comes so neither of us gets hurt. As a member of the Blood God Battalion, the former Blood 9 definitely possessed exemplary mental fortitude and battle intent. As such, he wasn't disheartened by Tang Wuling's rapid power increases in the slightest. Instead, this was only working to further stoke the flames in his heart. Sure. Tang Wuling nodded in response before departing from the Blood God Legion and quickly arriving at the resting area. Tang Wuling caught sight of Long Yakshu from a distance. She was sitting in the corner of the cafe with a cup of hot steaming coffee in her hands. What came as quite a surprise to him was that she wasn't wearing her military uniform today. Instead, she wore a high-collar white woolen jumper, and her long hair was arranged into a ponytail, giving her a very casual and refreshing appearance. From the side, he could see her beautiful facial features and her faintly fluttering eyelashes. Compared to her normal appearance, she had lost some of her heroic spirit, but gained a bit more delicate beauty. Tang Wuling strode over to her before sitting down across from her. She had applied some light makeup, which only made her appear even more gorgeous. Hey, what's up? Tang Wuling asked. Do you want something to drink? Long Yakshu avoided his question as she asked a question of her own, and she also seemed to be avoiding his gaze. Tang Wuling asked for a cup of black coffee from the waiter. He had never liked milk ever since he was a child, so he didn't like to add anything to his coffee, either. Soon, a cup of rich fragrant coffee was presented to him. There was clearly something on Long Yakshu's mind, and Tang Wuling cast a curious glance at her, but didn't ask any further questions. He took a sip of rich coffee, and its warm and bitter fragrance spread through his entire body. Long Yakshu suddenly raised her head and looked directly into Tang Wuling's eyes as she asked, Wuling, I heard from Jiang Wuyu that you already have a girlfriend. Is that true? Tang Wuling faltered slightly before chuckling. I'm such a handsome guy. Isn't it only normal that I already have a girlfriend? Why do you ask? Indeed, it was very normal for an exceptional man like him to have a girlfriend. Long Yakshu knew that all of the female military officials in the Legion who had met him were very fond of him, and he certainly had no lack of female admirers who were of a similar age to him. It was just that he was extremely reclusive and very rarely appeared in the resting area, which was why none of them had much of an opportunity to approach him. Do you love her? What is she like? Long Yakshu asked. Tang Wuling nodded and replied, I do. I really love her. As for what kind of person she is, to be honest, I don't really know. When I first met her, she had taken the initiative to try and get closer to me, and I didn't know what was going on at the time. We were students of the same class, and we cultivated together every day, so I gradually became accustomed to having her constantly by my side. As time passed, our relationship slowly began to blossom, but for some reason, she suddenly began to try and distance herself from me one day. I don't understand why she did that, but whenever I was in danger, she would also appear before me, and she would even risk her life to protect me. At the time, we were both quite young, so I didn't know what kind of feelings these were, but I knew that she had become an indispensable part of my life. Before I knew it, she had become the most important person in my heart, and we've endured countless hardships together. She left me once, and I was unable to find her, but in my direst hour of need, she returned to my side and shielded me with her own body. She's too complex for me to understand, so I don't know what kind of person she is, but I do know that she loves me, and I also love her, and that's enough. I love her no matter who she is. I love her no matter who she is. It was a very simple sentence, but it was quite clear from Tang Wuling's voice that these words harbored an awe-inspiring love story. Long Yakshu had initially harbored a hint of hope in her heart, but now, her face had become deathly pale, so much so that it was a little scary to look at. However, Tang Wuling seemed to be completely oblivious to this. He took another sip of coffee and continued, I love everything about her, and all I want to do is to become stronger so I can protect her, rather than have it be the other way around. Are you listening to me, Yakshu? Huh? Yes. Long Yakshu nodded with difficulty. Only then did Tang Wuling ask again, so what did you want to tell me? Long Yakshu shook her head vigorously and rose to her feet. Nothing. I have something urgent that I have to take care of in the special service department. I have to go. She then rushed away as quickly as she could. Tang Wuling didn't look at her departing figure. He merely lowered his head and continued to sip his coffee. You bastard. How could you hurt her like that? A large hand suddenly grabbed onto the front of his clothes before dragging him off his chair. Jiang Wuyu was standing before him, looking like an enraged lion, yet Tang Wuling merely looked back at him with a pair of clear and pure eyes. I don't want her to be hurt even more than this in the future, which is why I have to tell her the truth. I can't change her feelings toward me, but at the very least, I have to tell her who I like. Don't you understand that this is a better resolution than if I were to lead her on and drag her through the coals? Are you asking me to be with her now? Jiang Wuyu folded slightly before releasing Tang Wuling and sitting down in the seat that Long Yakshu had been sitting with a dejected look on his face. He placed his hands over his head and muttered, I knew she liked you. Even after I told her you had a girlfriend, she still refused to give up on you. Tang Wuling sighed. That's why I have to make her understand that there's no way her feelings can amount to anything. Jiang Wuyu scratched his head with a wry smile on his face. Sorry, I was too rash just now. I just can't bear to see her in pain. Is there really no possibility at all that you could accept her feelings? Tang Wuling picked up his coffee cup and said, a person's heart is like a cup. It has a limited capacity. My heart is already filled to the brim and can't even take a single drop. Jiang Wuyu grumbled. You could have just said no. Why are you trying to make yourself sound like a poet? Tang Wuling rolled his eyes. What are you even still doing here? Don't you know that this is an opportunity for you? Hurry up and go after her. She's a good girl, so you better not pass her up. Jiang Wuyu was rather hesitant. You think I should go after her? Is that really a good idea? Tang Wuling was feeling rather speechless. If you go after her, at least you have a chance. Otherwise, you'll have no chance. It's up to you. Jiang Wuyu was still quite hesitant. You sound like you know a lot about this. Have you had many girlfriends in the past? Tang Wuling's expression stiffened slightly. That's beside the point. In any case, I already have a girlfriend, and this comes from natural talent. It doesn't have anything to do with how many girlfriends I've had in the past. All right, I'll go. Jiang Wuyu rose to his feet before walking away as if he were trudging toward his own execution. A wry smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face. It appeared that it would not be an easy task for Jiang Wuyu to convince Long Yakshu to accept his feelings. After finishing his coffee, Tang Wuling gradually calmed down. In reality, he had already had a feeling before coming here that Long Yakshu was preparing to confess to him. As such, he knew that he couldn't delay any longer. Dragging this out would only result in more pain for everyone, so it was best to lay everything on the table. As such, he was currently feeling as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He stood up and did some stretches, then paid the accolades required for the coffee before exiting the resting area. Instead of returning to his dormitory room, he made his way toward the highest point in the entire Blood God Legion base. The air temperature was extremely low, and the fierce winds buffeted his body like scathing knives. If a normal person were in his shoes, it wouldn't take long before they'd be completely frozen solid. However, Tang Wuling found it to be quite refreshing and comfortable here in this world of snow and ice. Chapter 1033. He strode toward the top of the hill, and with his Blood God bracelet as identification, none of the sensory devices within the Legion base displayed any reaction to him. If he weren't concerned about causing an avalanche, he'd be really tempted to raise his head and roar to the heavens. During this recent period of time, everything had been going very smoothly for him. His powers were improving, as was his relationship with Yuna. After a while, he was going to tell her that he was her lover, as opposed to her father. The recollection of her fragrance scent appeared in his mind, and a sense of yearning welled up in his heart. He had already begun to fall in love with his life in the Blood God Legion. This place was completely isolated from the outside world, and everything was so peaceful here. All of the pressure on his shoulders could be temporarily lifted here, and ever since the conclusion of the abyssal tide, not much had been happening in the abyss. He turned around at the thought of the abyss before casting his gaze toward the abyssal passageway. There was faint grey energy visible in that direction, and he had learned from experience that there were some truly fearsome abyssal beings. He really wanted to explore the passageway and kill more abyssal creatures, as that would greatly benefit his powers. In particular, after breaking the 10 golden dragon king seal and attaining his 2 major energy cores, he was now brimming with confidence. As Blood Knight of the Blood God Legion, he was completely unrestricted here and could enter the abyssal passageway as he pleased. It had been a very long time since he had last ventured into the abyssal passageway, and not much had happened in there following the last abyssal tide, so he was considering paying it a visit. With that in mind, Tang Wuling's heart stirred slightly, and he raised his right hand before sending Blood One a message through his Blood God bracelet. He told Blood One that he was going to explore the abyssal passageway, but he was only going to explore the outskirts before departing. Blood One's reply came very quickly. He agreed for Tang Wuling to explore the abyssal passageway, but cautioned him against venturing too deep into the passageway, and told him to immediately come back if he were to encounter any powerful abyssal creatures. Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear was a very very sensitive object that had already caught the attention of the abyssal plane. The abyssal tide had just concluded, and the most powerful abyssal emperors had all expended a lot of power during the process. As such, they wouldn't be able to do anything in the near future under the restriction of the seal that had been placed on the abyssal passageway, but it was still better to be safe than sorry. Tang Wuling spread his wings and rose up into the air, gliding directly toward the abyssal passageway. He hadn't used his golden dragon wings much during his battles in the competition as he was trying to hide it, but there was no faster and more reliable way to travel in these snowy mountains than by taking flight. Due to his immense strength, the fierce winds on the mountains affected him very little. The abyssal passageway soon became visible in the distance, and Tang Wuling withdrew his wings before descending directly into the entrance. He was immediately greeted by the unique dark aura of the abyssal plane. All of the soldiers of the Blood God Legion that were on guard duty here had to be substituted every once in a while, and that was due to none other than the harmful effect of the abyssal aura here. After accumulating several millennia of experience, the Blood God Legion now had a very detailed database of information surrounding the abyssal plane. Tang Wuling's Blood God bracelet granted him smooth passage throughout his trip, and he chose one of the larger passageways to venture into. With his identity as Blood 9, he was able to bypass the defenses here without a hitch. The last time he had come here was with Long Yakshu, and they had encountered an abyssal tide on that occasion. He couldn't help but heave a faint internal sigh at the thought of Long Yakshu. He didn't know whether they could continue to be friends after what had just happened. After entering the passageway, Tang Wuling immediately released his Dragon Moon battle armor and Golden Dragon Spear. He didn't dare to be complacent here. His suit of two-word battle armor already had wings of its own, and after combining as one with his Golden Dragon wings, he now possessed far better control and accuracy in his flight, and at the same time, his dragon wings had also become a lot more powerful. His recent rapid power progression instilled within him a great deal of confidence, and he pointed his Golden Dragon Spear forward as he slowly walked on ahead. The passageway was quite spacious and dry, and if it weren't for the fact that he knew that this passageway was connected to the abyssal plane, this place really wouldn't seem all that eerie to him. Perhaps this was due to the fact that the abyssal tide had just concluded not long ago. But even after walking for around 20 minutes, Tang Wuling was still yet to encounter even a single abyssal creature. It appeared that the abyssal plane had truly been forced into a dormant state, and several dozens of years would most likely pass before the next abyssal tide arrived. That was a good thing. At the very least, the Blood God Legion would also get a chance to rest and recuperate. Even after venturing into the passageway for about as far as the deepest point that he had last visited with Long Yakshu, he still didn't encounter any abyssal creatures. It was as if no abyssal creatures had ever appeared here. No way. Had his trip been made completely in vain? Tang Wuling drew to a halt as a hint of hesitation welled up in his heart. Should he continue onward? Blood 1 hadn't told him not to progress past a certain point. All he had told him was to retreat if he were to encounter any powerful abyssal creatures. Blood 1 was clearly far more familiar with the abyssal plane than Tang Wuling was, and he knew that the abyssal passageway would go into a period of recession directly following an abyssal tide. As such, he wasn't overly concerned about Tang Wuling. After a brief moment of contemplation, Tang Wuling focused his attention and continued onward. He had come all this way already, so he had to at least see an abyssal creature. As he forged on ahead, the temperature within the abyssal passageway was gradually rising. There were also faint lights shimmering within the passageway, presenting rather strange sights to behold. Due to the fact that his spiritual power was close to the spirit domain realm, Tang Wuling could clearly sense that the number of spatial attribute elemental particles in the air was quickly increasing. As expected, a passageway that connected two realms was quite a remarkable place. He wondered how the abyssal plane had managed to connect itself with another plane before trying to invade it. If the abyssal plane could accomplish this, would the Douluo continent also be able to do so? The resources on the Douluo continent were quickly being depleted, and supplies of all types of ores and uncommon metals were constantly dwindling due to excessive mining. This was why the aggressive parliamentary factions had suggested attacking the two neighboring continents on many occasions. Their objective was very simple. They wanted to pillage more resources. However, what would happen if all of the resources on the entire Douluo star were to be exhausted? During his lessons back at Trek Academy, Tang Wuling had heard from his teachers that the Federation was currently working towards spatial exploration. According to scientific studies, there were countless planets in space, and there had to be some planets that were inhabitable for humans and possessed additional resources. It was just that space exploration was only in the infancy stages of its development, and it would take a long time before it was even possible to search for planets inhabitable to humans. If these wormhole-like inter-realm passageways could be created at will, then space exploration would undoubtedly become a lot easier. The spatial elements in the surrounding area became denser and denser, and Tang Wuling's intrigue toward the abyssal plane was also further piqued. His footsteps began to quicken, and the temperatures around him continued to rise. The size of the passageway hadn't changed much, but the spatial fluctuations were becoming more and more pronounced. Furthermore, Tang Wuling could sense that this passageway was pulsing rhythmically as if it were a blood vessel. This was a very intriguing feeling, and he plunged his golden dragon spear into the ground to sense the nature of the passageway. There was no energy transferred into his body, which indicated that this passageway itself didn't possess any life force energy. Could a passageway like this be destroyed? If this could be achieved, then they wouldn't have to worry about the abyssal plane ever again. He had to ask Blood 1 about this later. Only after truly coming here in person would he be able to gain a better understanding of the abyssal passageway, and even though he still hadn't seen any abyssal creatures, he didn't feel like this was a wasted trip. At the very least, he was able to gain a greater understanding of spatial elements in this place. The configuration of spatial elements in the abyssal passageway was quite peculiar, and it was beginning to border on the essence of the world, so sensing it was very effective for training his spiritual power, he continued onward, and the spatial elements within the passageway seemed to have reached a stable state where it was no longer increasing. There seemed to be no end to the passageway, and even as he continued to forge ahead, there was no end in sight. After walking for 2 full hours, Tang Wuling finally stopped. His instincts told him that he couldn't keep going. Otherwise, there seemed to be a change that would occur. There really are no abyssal creatures here. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Without abyssal creatures, he wouldn't be able to battle anything or absorb their energy. However, he was no longer the bullish young child that he was, and he was prioritizing his safety above all else. After all, Yuna was still waiting for him, so he decided to turn back. Chapter 1034. He silently inspected his surroundings to find that the spatial elemental fluctuations here were still quite powerful, and the abyssal passageway around him had taken on a deep orange hue. The temperatures here had exceeded 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, so it was a lot hotter in here than it was outside. The temperature changes were currently the only indication to him that he was advancing toward the abyssal plane. He stifled his own curiosity before turning back. It appeared that this was going to be a largely fruitless trip. However, after walking for only a few steps, an indescribable feeling suddenly welled up in his heart. His dragon core contracted violently, and enormous blood essence fluctuations instantly erupted forth. A faint cry of pain rang out, and Tang Wuling reflexively turned around while sweeping his golden dragon spear through the air. A black figure shot back like lightning, evading his spear and landing on the ground in the distance. Was this an abyssal creature? Tang Wuling was quite stunned by this sudden development as he hadn't sensed the presence of any abyssal creature even just a split second before this. With his spiritual power and sensory abilities, that was quite extraordinary, and in the end, it was only his dragon core's emergency response that alerted him to the existence of this creature. It seemed to be very fearful of his blood essence fluctuations and was immediately forced into retreat. Tang Wuling focused his gaze on the black shadow to find that it was a humanoid creature that was quite familiar to him. After taking a closer look, he was stunned to find that the black shadow bore a strong resemblance to him. Its height and figure were roughly identical to his, except its entire body was of a translucent black color, and its facial features were quite blurry. The black figure seemed to be also appraising Tang Wuling, and there were no energy or aura fluctuations emanating from its body whatsoever. Tang Wuling's pupils gradually turned vertical, and a layer of platinum light appeared over his suit of battle armor. A spear projection erupted from his golden dragon spear, and he thrust it directly toward the black shadow. Powerful spear intent whistled through the air within the abyssal passageway, and platinum light flashed as the spear projection hurtled directly toward the black shadow. The black shadow quickly retreated, and it appeared to be so light that its body seemed to be completely insubstantial. Tang Wuling couldn't sense any life force or energy fluctuations from the creature, but his instincts told him that this was a very dangerous being. His spear projection hurled forth while a giant golden dragon emerged from the tip of the spear. This was none other than his golden dragon shocks the heavens, and the golden dragon instantly encompassed the entirety of the shadow. However, a strange turn of events then unfolded. As the golden dragon came into contact with the black shadow, the golden dragon passed directly through its body. During the process, Tang Wuling's golden dragon also took on a black color, turning into a shadow that began to revolve around the black figure. Tang Wuling was stunned to see this. What was this creature supposed to be? This was the first time that he'd ever seen his golden dragon shocks the heavens being nullified like this. It seemed that his attack had been taken by the creature. The black shadow raised a hand before pointing at Tang Wuling, and the black golden dragon shocks the heavens immediately pounced directly toward him. Tang Wuling immediately adopted a calm expression. The more perilous the situation was, the more that he was able to keep his cool. He abruptly stomped his right foot onto the ground, and 8 golden dragons erupted into the air amid a resounding boom. It was none other than his golden dragon shakes the earth. The 8 golden dragons were each far smaller than the golden dragon shocks the heavens, but they outnumbered the black golden dragon shocks the heavens 8-1. As soon as they clashed, the black golden dragon shocks the heavens exploded and descended from above as a vast expanse of black mist. The 8 golden dragons formed by Tang Wuling's golden dragon shakes the earth were quickly also tainted black, and due to the enhancements from the golden dragon shocks the heavens, each of them had also become significantly larger. Thus, 8 black dragons descended from above, hurtling directly toward Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling's pupils abruptly contracted as his dragon core thumped violently. His third bloodline soul ring lit up, and an earth-shattering roar of fury rang out within the entire abyssal passageway. An enormous golden dragon head appeared, and all of its whiskers resembled blue silver emperor vines. This was his blood soul fusion skill, Blue Emperor Golden Dragon Roar. Roar. The thunderous dragon's roar made the entire passageway tremor violently, and the 8 black dragons were instantly destroyed, disintegrating into black streams of energy that were about to escape. Tang Wuling thrust his golden dragon spear through the air, and his blood essence power erupted forth. Scorching white light radiated from the golden dragon spear, instantly drawing all of these streams of black energy into the spear. Tang Wuling was immediately reciprocated by the energy from his own golden dragon shocks the heavens, and golden dragon shakes the earth. The energy was filtered by his golden dragon spear before returning to his body again. In the distance, the black shadow seemed to have been temporarily immobilized by the intimidation of his Blue Emperor Golden Dragon Roar, and Tang Wuling immediately held his golden dragon spear toward it. At the same time, countless blue silver emperor vines were released from his body before sweeping toward his opponent. In the instant that he unleashed his Blue Emperor Golden Dragon Roar, Tang Wuling sensed that the black figure could devour his energy-based attacks, but it seemed to be extremely fearful toward the life force energy released by his blue silver emperor vines. As such, the enlarged golden dragon shakes the earth was easily destroyed by his Blue Emperor Golden Dragon Roar. Seeing as it feared life force energy, his blue silver emperor vines would naturally be the best weapons to use against it. The black figure immediately tried to flee at the sight of the oncoming golden dragon spear, but it was affected by the Blue Emperor Golden Dragon Roar and was unable to evade. The golden dragon spear passed through its body before flying into the distance, and the black figure let loose a howl of anguish that seemed to have originated from deep within its soul. The entire black figure was then sucked in by the golden dragon spear and completely disappeared. Tang Wuling withdrew his blue silver emperor vines and waved a hand to draw the golden dragon spear back into his grasp. In the next instant, his eyes abruptly widened with surprise. He was stunned to discover that the energy flowing into his body wasn't fusing with his dragon core, nor his soul core. Instead, it flowed directly into his mind, making him feel as if his spirit had been cleansed, and he was able to sense the spatial elements within the abyssal passageway with even greater clarity. Were these spiritual enhancements? This was the first time that the energy absorbed by his golden dragon spear had enhanced his spiritual power. Furthermore, this was a permanent increase, rather than just a temporary boost. This was a massively pleasant surprise. After all, the most difficult thing to cultivate was spiritual power. He cultivated his purple demon eyes every day, but as his spiritual power became more and more enormous, the rate of cultivation was becoming slower and slower. That influx of energy just then was the equivalent of the amount of spiritual power that he'd attained from cultivating his purple demon eyes for at least a month. So how could he not be elated? These abyssal creatures that had been the enemies of the Blood God Legion for countless years were like extremely effective spirit items to him. With that in mind, a peculiar look appeared on Tang Wuling's face. He really wanted to see what the abyssal plane was like. If he were to become powerful enough to stay in the abyssal plane for a while, there was a good chance that he'd be able to make some significant breakthroughs. At the very least, the blood essence power that he accumulated would give him a greater chance of successfully breaking more golden dragon king seals in the future. He had constantly been familiarizing himself with his own new body lately, and the more he did this, the more he came to realize just how immense the energy within the final 9 golden dragon king seals was. The energy within the 10th seal alone was comparable to that of all of the previous 9 seals combined, and the later seals would only contain more energy. However, breaking these seals would also present him with very stern tests, and if his body couldn't handle it, then he'd be as good as dead. Absorbing the energy of abyssal creatures was definitely no less effective for him than consuming spirit items, and there was also almost no end to these creatures. The increase in his spiritual power made him very excited, and he almost couldn't repress the urge to continue onward. Chapter 1035. However, after enduring so many trials and tribulations, his mental state had become extremely disciplined and steadfast. He bit down on the tip of his own tongue, using the resulting pain to make himself more alert before he turned back in a determined manner. He had to report the situation that he'd just encountered to Blood One right away. That abyssal creature had definitely benefited him greatly, but it had also posed a relatively significant threat to him, and he knew if he would encounter abyssal creatures even more dangerous than that one if he were to continue onward. Safety had to be his #1 priority. Tang Wuling began to accelerate in his return journey, and it only took him less than a third of the time to get to the entrance of the abyssal passageway. After that, he returned to the Blood God Battalion. He naturally heaved a sigh of relief following his return, and he inspected his own bodily condition to ensure that there were no issues before directing his attention to his own mind. As expected, his mind had become slightly more powerful, and he was able to detect the elements around him with noticeably increased clarity. If he were to continue to cultivate at this rate, he firmly believed that it wouldn't take him long to reach the spirit domain realm. After reaching the spirit domain realm, he could directly use his spiritual power in battle, and it would create a strong enough foundation for him to cultivate all the way to the limit Douluo level. It was said that only true gods and an extremely small proportion of demigods managed to reach the divine origin realm. To Tang Wuling, the divine origin realm was far too distant for him to think about. At the very least, among all of the limit Douluo that he knew of, not even a single one of them had managed to reach the divine origin realm. This was also why they didn't dare to try to make the breakthrough to become godly beings. I'm back, Blood One. Do you have some free time right now? I have some observations that I'd like to discuss with you. Sure, come on over. After contacting Blood One, Tang Wuling went straight to the hall of the Blood God Battalion, and not long after that, Blood One emerged from his room. What are your observations? Blood One cut straight to the chase. Tang Wuling gave him a recount of everything that had just happened. Blood One's expression quickly changed in response, and he said, "Are you saying that your golden dragon spear can even devour possession demons? Possession demon? Is that what that black shadow was?" Tang Wuling asked. Blood One's expression was clearly uncharacteristically excited. Did this mean that possession demons were quite powerful? Blood One appraised him with a meaningful look, and only after a long while did he reply in a serious voice. Perhaps you really were sent to us by the heavens to resolve the issue of the abyssal plane once and for all. This is fantastic news. You don't know what kind of disasters these possession demons have brought upon us ever since the abyssal plane descended on our world. Tang Wuling was rather perplexed. He could only sense that he seemed to have done something that was quite remarkable. A hint of sorrow flashed through Blood One's eyes. Possession demons are found in the 7th layer of the abyssal plane, and they're one of the most powerful types of abyssal creatures. They don't possess much combat prowess, and they exist in spiritual forms, but as their names suggest, they possess an innate possession ability that's absolutely disastrous for us. No one knows how possession demons came into existence, and due to the fact that they possess no life essence or energy and are extremely adept at concealing themselves, they're very difficult to spot. It's often the case that someone will only detect their existence after they've already been possessed. Blood One paused momentarily before continuing. Once someone is possessed by a possession demon, they'll be forcibly controlled by it, and no one can resist its control unless they possess spirit domain realm spiritual power or above. Even someone with spirit domain realm spiritual power will be greatly affected by these creatures, and they'll need to fight with all their might for a chance to break free. During this process, it'll be very difficult for one to move their body. During our first major battle against the abyssal plane over 6,000 years ago, we knew nothing about these possession demons, and several dozens of our most powerful beings were possessed. Even several of our limit Douluos had been killed under what we had thought to be completely inexplicable circumstances during that battle. Close to half of the most elite soul masters on the entire continent perished during that battle, and only many years later did we gradually discover through our battles against the abyssal plane that these possession demons feared life force energy. As long as One carried an extremely rare type of life crystal with them. They would be immune from its possession ability. However, by that time, we had already lost countless powerful beings to those abhorrent creatures. Furthermore, the most terrifying trait of possession demons is that they can't be killed. They can infect and control all physical, spiritual, and energy attacks, and they're especially adept at taking over projected attacks, just like your golden dragon attacks. I truly didn't think that you'd be able to kill them. This is absolutely brilliant news. Tang Wuling was quite flabbergasted to hear this. From the sounds of it, these possession demons were even more powerful than black empresses. At the very least, black empresses and demonic enchantresses possessed physical bodies, so they could be defeated. But these possession demons were completely different. During his battle against that possession demon, he had been struck by a sense of powerlessness, as if none of his attacks were going to work. Even his blue silver emperor vines, which possessed immense life force energy, were only able to force back the creature, and it was only his golden dragon spear that was able to kill it in the end. Blood One continued. Thankfully, even though possession demons are extremely fearsome, their numbers are very limited. Also, after many years of research, we deduced that each possession demon can only use their possession ability 3 times in its life, so they won't just go around possessing anyone. Once possession is successfully completed, a possession demon will gradually completely control its host, transforming all of its host's abilities into their own abilities, and at the same time, they also possess some special abilities of their own. You're very lucky in that the possession demon you encountered most likely hasn't possessed anyone yet. If you had encountered one that had already possessed someone and taken their abilities, they would be a lot more powerful and very difficult to handle. Hence, formless possession demons are indeed quite terrifying, but possession demons with physical forms are even more fearsome. Tang Wuling drew a sharp breath upon hearing this. The innate ability of these possession demons was way too fearsome. Blood One appraised Tang Wuling with an intense gaze. There will never be a total of more than 36 possession demons at any time, and only after one of them dies will another one be born. However, we don't know what circumstances will result in death for them. At the very least, we've never managed to kill a single possession demon on the battlefield, so you've created history. On top of that, you killed a new possession demon that hasn't yet had a chance to possess anyone, which means that their numbers have been permanently lowered to 35. This is definitely a significant contribution, and I'll be reporting this to request a reward for you. Tang Wuling looked down at his blood god bracelet, but I don't seem to have earned any accolades for this. A wry smile appeared on Blood One's face. That's because no possession demon has ever been killed before, so it's naturally not in the system. However, we can add it specifically for you now. Of course, you were elevated to the Major General rank very quickly, so you actually owe the Legion a lot of accolades. That debt can be settled by the accolades you earned from killing this possession demon. Tang Wuling's lips twitched upon hearing this. That sounded very shady. So the promotion that he had earned after defeating Blood 9 wasn't actually free. In reality, this made sense. The former Blood 9 had already accumulated enough accolades to promote him to the senior colonel rank, so after he was defeated by Tang Wuling, he reverted back to that rank. If he had already earned enough accolades to earn a promotion to the Major General rank, then even after being dethroned as Blood 9 by Tang Wuling, he would still be a Major General. Furthermore, an astronomical number of accolades was required for a senior colonel to be promoted to the Major General rank. This is a very important matter that I have to inform the Legion commander about. Don't venture into the abyssal passageway in the near future. The fact that you've killed a possession demon will most definitely have alerted the abyssal plane. So if you go again, I'll be accompanying you. However, now is not the time to make that trip. We still have to make more preparations, and you also need to improve. Tang Wuling departed while Blood 1 looked on with an excited and contemplative gaze. He reflexively clenched his fists. He was seeing more and more hope from Tang Wuling, and he knew that Tang Wuling was the key to truly eradicating the threat of the abyssal plane. It was going to take an extremely long time to achieve that goal, but at the very least, there was finally a ray of hope after several dozens of generations of arduous efforts from the members of the Blood God Legion. If it were possible to leave this place behind, no one would want to stay in this godforsaken land of ice and snow. Furthermore, the threat of the abyssal plane was a ticking time bomb that was going to explode sooner or later, so it had to be permanently addressed at some point. During the next few days, Tang Wuling continued to compete every day, alternating between Soulmaster battles and mecha battles. The rest of his time was spent in cultivation, and every day passed by in a routine yet busy manner for him. Long Yakshu didn't come to find him again, and she didn't even come to visit him while he was forging, so he didn't know what her condition was like. Chapter 1036. It was a good thing for her to take some time to calm herself down, so Tang Wuling didn't contact her. He had already rejected her, so it wouldn't be a good idea to get her hopes up again. However, he truly wished from the bottom of his heart that he would still be friends with Long Yakshu, and he really admired her personality. She was a kind-hearted girl, and Tang Wuling was hoping that Zhang Wuyu would be able to give her happiness. Tang Wuling emerged from his group in the first position and progressed to the final 16 as a hot favorite. In contrast, he had more difficulty with his mecha battles. All of the mecha pilots who had made it to the round robin stage had extraordinary mecha handling skills, and Tang Wuling's own skills were constantly improving through these arduous battles. Through the experience that he'd accumulated during these battles, he also became more and more adept at controlling his own body. Of course, it would still take him some more time if he wanted to be able to perfectly use his newfound power. The final round robin match of the mecha battle discipline was going to take place today, and Tang Wuling had already been guaranteed a berth in the top 16. The opponent that he was facing had also ensured their progression to the next round, so this was going to be a battle that decided who would take out the top spot in their group. Tang Wuling's mecha was wielding its usual long spear as it stood on the competition platform. His opponent was number 68, which was quite similar to his number of 66, and they were also wielding a spear. If it weren't for the difference in the last digit of their respective numbers, they would be completely identical. This match wasn't going to affect whether they progressed to the next round, but it did affect who they were going to face in the top 16. The top mecha pilot of a group was guaranteed to face the second mecha pilot of another group, and vice versa. Hence, this match was far from a meaningless one. Tang Wuling wasn't really thinking about all of that. He was simply cherishing every single opportunity for him to improve himself through these matches. He had already prepared almost all of the materials required to construct his black mecha, and the accolades he earned through soul refinement jobs had all been spent on different types of materials. He had even placed some orders to Bright City through the Legion, and those materials were going to arrive in a few days. The more proficient he became at piloting mechas, the more interested in them he became. He now understood why Mu Yi had dedicated so much of his time and effort to mecha construction, to the extent that he'd even hampered his own battle armor and cultivation. The enhancements that mechas provided to soul masters were very direct. This was only the most ordinary generic mecha, yet after Tang Wuling became adept at handling it, he was able to complete many maneuvers that soul masters were unable to perform. Furthermore, mechas were the best form of protection for soul masters, and they differed greatly from battle armor in this area. The enhancements provided by suits of battle armor were more direct and more potent, and they were also more flexible and agile than mechas. However, suits of battle armor had to be supported by the soul master's powers. To some soul masters with lower power levels, they simply didn't possess enough energy to support a suit of battle armor, so they were destined to never be able to become battle armor masters. However, mechas were different from this. Powerful mechas could draw upon soul batteries and circuits to unleash immense combat prowess, so even if a soul master had insufficient soul power, they could still rely on their mechas to battle for them. As such, battle armor was indeed very powerful, but mechas possessed advantages that battle armor didn't possess. This also made it even clearer to Tang Wuling why Mu Yi had suggested that he still needed a mecha. He could already achieve this much with a generic mecha. How powerful would a custom-made black mecha make him become? In reality, it was impossible even for red mechas to be entirely constructed from heavenly refined metals. Only the more important core components had to be heavenly refined. Tang Wuling was very confident in his own forging, and he firmly believed that he was going to become a divine blacksmith someday. When that day came, he was going to construct a divine grade mecha for himself. What he was planning now was to construct the most powerful super mecha that he was currently capable of creating, and that would further contribute to a solid foundation for his future endeavor to revive Shrek Academy. At the same time, he informed his friends of this idea through soul communication, cautioning them not to write off mechas as simply inferior to battle armor. In particular, this applied quite heavily to Shu Lizzie. As a food system soul master, if he could possess a powerful mecha that he could control in an expert manner, then he'd be able to significantly make up for his shortcomings when it came to offensive output. Everyone had joined the military, and even though they contacted one another relatively infrequently, they would all occasionally take some time to communicate what they'd learned and experienced in the military, as well as through their own cultivation. Tang Wuling could sense that he was not the only one who was developing at a rapid rate. Ever since the disaster that had befallen Shrek Academy, everyone was doing everything they could to improve, and those efforts were certainly shining through. Tang Wuling had made an agreement with his friends, telling them not to be in a hurry to make their next major breakthroughs. Instead, they should continue to accumulate their soul power. And when they meet again, everyone would be able to fuse with a 100,000-year-old soul spirit that would significantly boost their overall powers once again. When that time came, they would truly be Shrek's 7 monsters. 3, 2, 1, begin. Number 68 swept his long spear through the air, and a vast expanse of spear projections fanned out before him. This was a customary formality prior to the commencement of a battle, and at the same time, it was a display of Number 68's mastery in spear techniques, which was meant to intimidate Tang Wuling and affect his confidence. Tang Wuling's mecha merely raised its spear and jabbed it forward 3 times as an acknowledgement of his opponent. The two of them then controlled their mechas to rush toward one another almost in unison. Neither of them had used their propellers, and both of their mechas were advancing in a very straightforward manner. Tang Wuling's eyes were shimmering with faint light. The more powerful his opponent was, the more battle intent he was able to muster up. He had improved very quickly in his spear techniques, but most of that came from his fury of the masses. His opponent was also using a spear on this occasion, and it was more important for him to learn some lessons from observing his opponent's spear techniques than it was for him to win this battle. The two mechas instantly approached one another, and just as it looked as if they were about to clash, Number 68's spear was abruptly thrust forward. His spear projection was of an icy blue color, and as soon as it appeared, Tang Wuling could clearly sense that the air temperature around his mecha had instantly plummeted, to the extent that even the movement speed of his mecha had been hampered. Immense bloodline power erupted from his body before spreading throughout his entire mecha, and a layer of faint golden light appeared over the surface of his generic mecha, allowing it to instantly ward off the frosty temperatures. At the same time, the spear being wielded by Tang Wuling's mecha was jerked upward toward his opponent's spear. Whoosh! All of a sudden, Number 68's spear disappeared, but in the instant that Tang Wuling's spear flashed past, his spear reappeared before thrusting toward the chest of Tang Wuling's mecha like a lightning-fast viper. Several dozens of spear projections instantly appeared at the same time, and all of them were aimed at vital regions of Tang Wuling's mecha. The flurry of attacks created quite a mesmerizing sight to behold, and the speed at which the spear strikes had been unleashed was clearly superior to that of Tang Wuling. This was not an indication of his control over his spear, but instead, an indication of the speed at which he could control his mecha. It was undoubtedly the case that the speed at which he was operating this generic mecha was at the very upper limit of its tolerance capacity. Tang Wuling harumphed coldly, and it appeared that there would be no way for him to evade this attack, but all of a sudden, his mecha began to sway in an unpredictable manner, unleashing the ghost shadow perplexing track. One spear projection whizzed past him after another, and at the same time, he swept his own spear horizontally through the air in an extremely overbearing manner. There were no techniques or tricks to speak of. It was just a pure horizontal sweep imbued with an unstoppable will, and it appeared as if his single sweep of his spear could wipe out an entire army. Chapter 1037. Tang Wuling was sure that his opponent would have surveyed his battle footage in the past, so he had to be aware of Tang Wuling's strength. As such, there was no way that he would decide to fight fire with fire. His opponent's spear techniques were simply far too fast. Tang Wuling was trying to evade with all his might using his ghost shadow perplexing track, but this was a mecha, after all, so it still wasn't as agile as a human body. As such, it was still struck a few times by his opponent's spear. However, if his opponent wanted to continue in his attack, then he'd be struck by Tang Wuling's sweeping spear, and it was up to him to weigh up his options. Tang Wuling was unleashing an attack that his opponent had to defend against. Following so many rounds of mecha battles, Tang Wuling had accumulated far more combat experience than before, so he definitely wasn't going to be holding back in critical situations. As expected, Number 68 immediately reacted to Tang Wuling's oncoming spear strike, controlling his mecha to leap backward. However, at the same time, he raised his spear and evaded Tang Wuling's attack before plunging the tip of his own spear into the ground. Blue light flashed, and the ground beneath the feet of Tang Wuling's mecha was instantly transformed into a patch of smooth ice. That's right, it was ice, and on a surface like this, it would be very difficult for a mecha to exert any power into the ground. Meanwhile, the opposing mecha had already risen up into the air before unleashing a vast expanse of spear projection that cut off virtually all avenues of evasion for Tang Wuling. The ice on the ground didn't really affect Tang Wuling's mecha if he were to do nothing but stand on the spot, but if he wanted to move, then he would most definitely be affected. At the same time, countless spear projections were raining down on him from above, making it impossible for his mecha to take flight. It had to be said that this tactic from Number 68 was a very damaging one, and if it were to succeed, Tang Wuling would be placed at an absolute disadvantage. Tang Wuling's brows furrowed slightly as he controlled his own mecha to squat down. However, as opposed to attempting to spring up into the air, he was simply doing this to reduce the exposed surface area of his mecha. At the same time, he thrust his spear upward, and rather than unleashing a large number of spear projections, this was only a single spear strike. A platinum spear projection erupted from the tip of Tang Wuling's spear, whistling through the air and looking as if it were about to puncture the very heavens itself. Powerful spear intent combined with fierce blood essence fluctuations to create an absolutely devastating attack. Number 68's heart jolted upon seeing this. He had originally thought that Tang Wuling had controlled his mecha to squat down in order to minimize its exposed surface area, so he had attacked with even greater ferocity. However, what he didn't expect was for Tang Wuling to be able to unleash such a powerful spear strike even as he was squatting down. He had been swindled. It was undoubtedly the case that the squatting motion had been completely superfluous. Tang Wuling could have just unleashed his retaliative attack without squatting down first. However, he had done this in order to trick Number 68 into overextending and injecting more power into his attacks, thereby making it difficult for him to adopt any other tactics. It appeared that Tang Wuling was inferior in terms of skills, speed, and reactions, but this simple squatting motion immediately alerted Number 68 to the fact that his opponent definitely didn't possess inferior practical combat techniques than his. All of a sudden, an icy blue mirror appeared in the air. The mirror reflected the light emanating from Tang Wuling's spear projection, and in the instant that the spear struck the mirror, Tang Wuling felt the tip of his spear slide along the mirror surface, and his attack was diverted off to the side. Meanwhile, the spear projections unleashed by Number 68's mecha also reached Tang Wuling's mecha, but they were a lot less powerful than they originally were. Tang Wuling's mecha then clenched its left fist before unleashing an almighty punch. The punch appeared to be an extremely simple one, but as soon as the fist was launched through the air, a burst of fierce and unstoppable power erupted forth. This was a pure eruption of Tang Wuling's blood essence power. The air exploded to form a massive wall of air that kept the oncoming spear projections at bay. The surface of Tang Wuling's mecha was enshrouded by a layer of ice and frost as a result, but Number 68's mecha had also been forced to fly backward before descending onto the platform in the distance. Their very first clash was already an extremely exhilarating one. Tang Wuling's mecha sprang up from its squatting position, flying out of the area of the platform that was covered by ice. As the mecha landed on the ground, the ice and frost that had settled over it had already been dispelled by his immense blood essence power. They appeared to be evenly matched. No one had managed to seize the upper hand during that first clash, yet both of them had displayed the skills they were most adept at. Tang Wuling slowly raised his spear, and the spear projection was still flickering from the tip of the spear. His opponent also did the same thing. Following that initial clash, both of them had become more cautious toward one another, but at the same time, their respective battle intent were elevating in a frenzy. Faint energy fluctuations were constantly rising up around the two mechas, clearly indicating that they were both accumulating power, so the next clash was undoubtedly going to be an earth-shattering affair. The commentators were also so nervous that they were unable to say anything. This was the final match of this group, and it was going to decide who took out the first position. As such, it was undoubtedly going to be the most spectacular match of this group, and it was being heavily broadcasted. Number 66 and Number 68 didn't disappoint the audience either. They treated all of the spectators to a spectacular show just in their opening clash alone. Those were only ordinary generic mechas. Anyone who had worked with mechas had used these things, yet the same mecha could display vastly different levels of combat prowess depending on the mecha pilot it was being used by. This gave many mecha pilots who were lacking in cultivation aptitude hope. Even generic mechas could be very powerful when used well. Tang Wuling took a deep breath and reflected on his opponent's spear techniques. At the same time, he was experiencing his own spear intent, and he gradually developed the feeling that he was no longer operating a mecha. Instead, he felt as if he were participating in this battle himself. Mecha and body as one. That's right, this was the state that Ling Wuyu had told him about. In her original words, if one wanted to be a truly great mecha pilot, then the first thing they had to do was to become one with their mecha. Only when a mecha pilot felt as if a mecha were their own body could they perfectly unleash their mecha's full power and perfectly integrate their own powers and abilities with their mecha. Both mechas sprang into action at the same time, as if their advances had been choreographed. Both of their propellers were activated to elevate their speed to the very max, and both of them were pointing their spears forward with unstoppable intent. Number 68's mecha had completely turned into an icy blue color, and countless ice spikes had even appeared over the surface of the mecha. In contrast, Tang Wuling's mecha had turned into a shimmering golden color, and the two mechas had clearly become far more powerful than the average generic mecha. The two of them reached one another in what seemed like the blink of an eye, and both of them thrust their spears forward without any tricks or embellishments. The spear being wielded wielded by number 68's mecha had turned into an icy blue color, and countless ice spikes spread along its shaft before exploding violently. It was as if countless ice spears had erupted forth, akin to a massive blossoming ice flower. Meanwhile, Tang Wulin's spear split into two, then into three, then into countless spears as countless blue silver emperor vines also transformed into spears that were hurtling through the air. Each and every vine was imbued with immense blood essence power, as well as the peerless fear intent in his heart. All of the blue silver emperor vines then instantly converged toward the center and fused into the mecha's spear, Fury of the Masses. In the face of the immense pressure being exerted on him by his opponent, Tang Wulin unleashed Fury of the Masses again. This wasn't the complete version of the technique, but he was able to incorporate everything that he'd learned to fuse his blue silver emperor vines with his spear. As soon as each blue silver emperor vine came into contact with the mecha's spear, the former would naturally wind itself around the spear, making the spear thicker and heavier. Spear intent and spear projection also fused into the spear before reciprocating the mecha, making the golden light emanating from it even more bright and dazzling. At this moment, number 68 was like an icy flower in full bloom, and Tang Wulin resembled a massive rotating sharp drill. It was undoubtedly the case that these were both devastatingly powerful attacks, and that the battle was going to be decided by this exchange. All of the spectators looked on with bated breath. No one could have predicted that a conclusion would be reached so quickly in this battle. Tang Wulin and number 68 had both decided to do this as they knew that they were each facing an extremely powerful opponent. In the face of such a powerful opponent, how could they not unleash the pinnacle of their power? This was a clash of power and will, as well as their understanding of spear intent. The icy flower and golden spike clashed. Both of them faltered momentarily, and during that split second, the commentators and spectators all felt as if their hearts had skipped a beat. In the next instant, a burst of golden light suddenly erupted from behind the icy flower, and the stationary golden spike hurtled forward once again, instantly reducing the massive ice flower to a vast expanse of ice powder. This was an extremely dazzling and astonishing sight to behold. The victory goes to number 66. Only after 3 full seconds had passed did raucous cheers erupted throughout the entire venue, and there were also countless people screaming in front of their cell screens. Chapter 1038. The direct and violent clash had moved virtually everyone. Even number 68, who had just lost the match, received a lot of praise from the audience. The only one left standing at the center of the competition platform was that shimmering golden mecha. The mecha was riddled with countless cracks and damaged areas, presenting a rather sorry sight to behold, but its horror and will still remained. It was the victor of this battle, and it had truly stunned all of the spectators of this match. Spear King, Spear King, Spear King. Someone began to chant this name, and even the commentators couldn't help but join in on the chants. There had certainly been no lack of spear-wielding mecha pilots during this competition, but very few of them managed to progress to the finals. Among them, the two greatest representatives were undoubtedly number 66 and number 68. This was only the final match of the round-robin stage, but it had undoubtedly determined the hierarchy of the spear-wielding mechas. It was undoubtedly the case that number 66's spear techniques were the most powerful. At this moment, Tang Wulin was still lying in his star cabin with his eyes closed, and his mind was still completely filled with the recollection of the spear strike he'd just unleashed. He seemed to have truly grasped it. In the instant that he had unleashed that spear strike, he clearly sensed in his mind that his own figure seemed to have overlapped with that of old Tangback when he was demonstrating Fury of the Masses for the first time. Only now could he completely confirm that he'd finally achieved initial mastery of his Fury of the Masses. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face. All of the days he'd spent cultivating hadn't gone to waste. Just this one spear technique had taken him so long to cultivate and hone, but he was elated to finally be making substantial progress. He had progressed to the next stage as first in his group. He had made it to the final 16 in both Soulmaster and Mecha battles, and he was a hot favorite to become the final champion in both disciplines. There wasn't as much hype for him in Mecha battles compared to in Soulmaster battles, but that was only because Tang Wulin hadn't used any of his powerful soul skills during his Mecha battles. Instead, he was trying to dedicate more effort into honing his Mecha piloting skills. He had to become the final champion. I accept. A deep voice seemed to have rung out across the entire world of darkness. A massive figure sat atop a lofty throne. The figure was entirely inky black in color, and bore the appearance of a massive humanoid statue. As he spoke, the entire space around him warped and twisted violently. In the sky above, a grey figure that was just as enormous nodded in response. Very good. We'll begin making our preparations. Then, this time, nothing will be able to stop us. We have to destroy all potential threats, and your child won't have died in vain. As soon as we take over that world, everything that you've lost will be replenished. Cut the chit-chat. We should have already devoured that world long ago. Seeing as a human is now willing to open up a passageway for us, that world is as good as ours. Can we form a pact now? Yes. Their objectives have no conflict of interest with ours. They want to kill all of the living beings in that world, and we want to devour all of the energy in that world. They only want a baleful aura and destructive power, whereas we want all of the energy, so our objectives do not clash. Those humans really are insane, to think that they want to recreate a divine realm with destruction and hatred as a core and foundation. If we can obtain enough power, then we'll be able to make our plane evolve, so it's a win-win situation. Go and make the preparations. The 9 of us will sign a pact with them. They wouldn't dare to go back on their word. All right, then it's settled. Let's completely destroy these pesky humans once and for all. The passageway has already been connected for so long. It's about time we put an end to everything. If we keep pursuing a conservative route in search of opportunities, who knows how much longer it'll take. Even though we're taking a risk, success will benefit us more greatly than all of the small worlds we've devoured in the past combined. Tang Wulin was in a meditative state as he silently sensed all of the elemental particles in the world around him. Blood One had told him that it would still take a very long time for one to reach the spirit domain realm even after they attained the ability to sense elements. The ability to sense elements only indicated that there was a possibility for one to reach the spirit domain realm, and the true signatures of spirit domain realm spiritual power involved being able to clearly sense elements in the outside world, and also to control them with one's spiritual power. It was undoubtedly the case that Tang Wulin was still very far away from reaching that stage. Hence, he still had to constantly sense elements, and this process was also a great way for him to cultivate his own spiritual power. At the same time, he could gain a better understanding of the special nature of the essence of the world. Even though he was still only a soul emperor, Blood One had already educated him in many areas surrounding tidal Douluo. After reaching the tidal Douluo stage, it would become extremely difficult for one to progress even a single rank. The most important driving force behind one's progression was for one to understand the essence of the world and make their own essence as close as possible to that of the world. There were no techniques or shortcuts involved during this process. It was mainly about sensing the outside world. The essence of the world was different for everyone, and it was undoubtedly the case that whoever was the closest to the truth would be the closest to the pinnacle. No one could articulate to someone what the essence of the world was, as the essence that one was closest to differed depending on their mental state and abilities. It was an extremely abstract concept that one could only grasp for themselves. Tang Wulin most definitely possessed super aptitude. He was just a 6-ring soul emperor, yet he was able to defeat Blood 9. Of course, this was partially due to the fact that Blood 9 had held back against and underestimated him, but that still didn't change the fact that Blood 9 was a tidal Douluo. The fact that Tang Wulin had been able to defeat him had truly stunned the entire Blood God battalion. As such, Blood 1 advised him to immediately begin doing some things that only tidal Douluos would do. In doing so, he would be forging a stable foundation for himself while his best years were still ahead of him, and that would allow him to prepare for reaching the pinnacle of the human race in the future. Technological advancements had dealt a massive blow to Soulmasters, and Soulmasters were nowhere near as revered as they were in the past. However, it was undoubtedly the case that the most powerful Soulmasters still stood at the pinnacle of the entire world. During the disaster that befell Shrek Academy, if the Atlas Douluo had tried to escape with all his might, no one would have been able to stop him. He only chose to sacrifice himself so he could protect the final seeds of Shrek Academy, and in the process, he also severely dented the Holy Spirit cult. That was sufficient testament to just how fearsome a limit Douluo, who was also a 4-word battle armor master, was. After reaching that level, one would be powerful enough to command respect from the entire Federation, and that was the true reason why Shrek Academy had managed to stand for so many years. Tang Wulin definitely had to build up his own forces if he wanted to rebuild Shrek Academy, but at the same time, he also required absolute power. Tang Wu meditated for an indeterminate amount of time, and he gradually entered a state of complete immersion. All of his powers and abilities had been improving too quickly recently, so he had to give himself more time to meditate. Following an increase in one's powers, one had to take the time to assess themselves, as only then would they be able to better understand and control their own body. The final elimination stage of the Star BattleNet Inter-Federation competition was about to arrive, and there weren't many matches left, but all of his opponents were going to be the most elite young soul masters of the Federation. In other words, they were the absolute cream of the crop among those who weren't three-word battle armor masters yet. As such, each and every match was going to be extremely arduous. According to his knowledge, two other members of the Legion had also made it to this stage, and Marshan wasn't one of them. Chapter 1039. Even with Marshan's powers, he was unable to progress beyond the round-robin stage. One had to realize that he was a two-word battle armor master who was also an 8-ring soul Douluo. He only needed to complete his suit of three-word battle armor before he could become a three-word battle armor master. Even so, Marshan still lost 2 matches in the round-robin stage and failed to progress to the final 16. In terms of overall power, the group that Tang Wulin was a part of was one of the weaker groups, but he was still considered to be a hot favorite due to the strange and powerful abilities he displayed. No one knew what his true cultivation rank was, as he was always able to hide it using the disguise skills he'd learned on the demonic island. Every single match, the colors and numbers of his soul rings were constantly changing, and that was one of the main talking points surrounding him. Of course, there were some familiar faces who had also made it to the top 16, 2 of which he was extremely familiar with. Yi Xinglan sat within her silent cultivation chamber with her legs crossed and her eyes closed. Even though she was meditating, there was still an indescribably sharp aura emanating from her body. Her blue military uniform indicated that she was currently part of the Navy, and the 2 bars and 2 stars on each of her epaulets reflected a lieutenant colonel military rank. She and Shu Lizzie had made it into this Navy after passing the new soldier selection trials with their own powers. This was the East Sea Fleet, which was widely renowned as the Invincible Fleet, and it was also the most powerful fleet in the entire Federation. In terms of overall numbers, the East Sea Legion didn't have many more soldiers than the North Sea Legion. However, the North Sea Legion couldn't even begin to compare with the overall powers of the soldiers here, as well as the equipment they'd been given. The soldiers here were truly the elites of the elites. Standing behind the East Sea Legion was the Federation's battle god Hall, and the commander of the Legion was a general, so he was truly one of the most powerful and influential beings in the entire military. The mantra of the East Sea Legion was very simple: one's power determined their rank. As long as one was powerful enough, it was very easy for them to be promoted multiple ranks at a time. No one dared to do anything shady or out of line under the supervision of the battle god Hall. Furthermore, among all of the legions in the Federation, the East Sea Legion was the one that revered individual power the most. Yi Xinglan and Shu Lizzie had both disguised themselves before joining the Legion and participating in the trial. A 6-ring food system soul master was naturally instantly held in extremely high regard, and when they first arrived at the Legion, Shu Lizzie had actually been held in even higher regard than Yi Xinglan. The reason for that was very simple. During a battle, a 6-ring food system soul master could support the entire fleet's energy expenditure on his own. As long as there were enough soul masters on the fleet, they could virtually keep battling forever. As such, Shu Lizzie was given the major rank as soon as he joined the Legion, and among all of the members of Shrek 7 Monsters, he was the one who had received the highest military rank after just joining the military. Now, he was already a lieutenant colonel in the East Sea Legion's logistics department. Furthermore, he had performed extremely well during a training drill, using his steamed funds to greatly benefit the entire fleet. As a result, he received the highest reward that the Legion had to offer, and it would take him 3 more months at most before he would be promoted to the colonel rank. It had already been over a month since that training drill, but it was still quite a hot topic on everyone's lips. At the time, Shu Lizzie had stood atop a vantage point, creating all types of steamed buns before using the Tangsek's hidden weapon hand techniques to hurl the buns toward important battle stations. On that occasion, the most effective bun wasn't actually his recovery pork bun. Instead, it was his agility mini soup bun, which had drastically improved the movement speed and efficiency of all of the battle units. The mecha units on the fleet had also benefited immensely from his bloodthirsty red bean buns. During a battle against the other half of the mecha squad on the fleet, they had absolutely crushed their opponents when it should have been an even battle. It could be said that Shu Lizzie had completely transformed the entire dynamic of the battle on his own. This was the advantage of having a high-grade food system soul master, and following that training drill, he had already become an extremely hot commodity in the fleet. This was why he'd managed to rise up the ranks so quickly, and he was now widely renowned as the new rising star of the fleet's logistics department. Once he reached the soul stage level, he would only be held in high regard. The East Sea Fleet was hoping to nurture him into a food system titled Douluo in the future. There were only records of 2 food system titled Douluo on the entire continent, but both of them were over 80 years of age, so there was no way that they'd serve in the military. If their fleet could have a food system titled Douluo on their side, then they could almost be referred to as the unkillable fleet. As such, Shu Lizzie was regarded as one of the most important talents in the entire fleet. Compared to Shu Lizzie, Yi Xinglan had walked a completely different path. As a 6-ring soul emperor, it wouldn't be impossible for her to have received a major rank if she had joined any other legion, but that didn't apply to the East Sea Fleet. The East Sea Fleet had extremely rigorous requirements, and they already had many powerful beings to begin with. As such, not only did one have to possess a lofty cultivation rank, they also had to possess sufficient combat prowess, and those two weren't always equivalent to one another. There were many scholarly soul masters with little to no practical combat experience, and they were often next to useless after joining the military. As such, the East Sea Legion had a clear-cut rule, which stated that the highest military rank that could be given to pure battle soul masters when first joining the Legion was the captain rank. As such, Yi Xinglan received the captain rank, and she climbed all the way to the lieutenant colonel rank in such a short time purely through her own powers. The East Sea Legion revered individual power, and there were all types of competitions constantly being held within the Legion. Yi Xinglan quickly swept through 3 individual competitions with her immense powers, securing 3 consecutive championship titles that finally drew attention from the higher-ups. She was extremely beautiful, and had displayed ultra-powerful combat prowess, so the higher-ups of the Legion naturally began to pay more and more attention to her. Not long after that, she was able to use her unstoppable sword intent to defeat a soul Douluo, who was also a 2-word battle armor master, and she was promoted to the lieutenant colonel rank as a result. During that battle, Yi Xinglan herself had also sustained severe injuries, and she had adopted an extremely reckless method of battle where she was risking her life to take down her opponent. In the end, her opponent succumbed to her devastating sword intent. From that day forth, Yi Xinglan also received the nickname of Battle Goddess. Everyone in the Legion knew of the Starlight Battle Goddess, and as opposed to the Star God sword, the martial soul that Yi Xinglan had reported to the Legion was the Starlight sword. After joining the Legion, she and Shu Lizzie were split into different departments, but both of them had heeded Tang Wulin's advice and began to practice mecha piloting. They had already grasped the basics at this point, and Shu Lizzie was taking this particularly seriously. The Legion gave him extensive support when it came to resources, so he was able to improve very quickly in his mecha piloting skills. Even as she was in silent meditation, Yi Xinglan's heart was currently filled with raging battle intent. There was a star cabin close beside her, and it was the most expensive model currently on the market. She had represented the East Sea Legion in the competition, and she was the only member of the Legion who had progressed to the top 16. The higher-ups of the Legion had already promised her that they would promote her to the colonel rank if she would make it into the final 8, and if she could secure the championship title, they would promote her to the senior colonel rank. At the summit of a mountain, a figure that wasn't particularly tall nor broad was slowly throwing one punch after another. Wind and clouds suddenly began to surge around the mountain summit, and the vast expanse of clouds in the air gradually converged to form a massive fist projection. Even though the projection only lasted for a second, it was extremely clear and spectacular to behold. The figure turned around before throwing another punch, and it didn't appear to be all that powerful, but howling winds erupted over the entire mountain summit once again. It was as if she were a great beast who was capable of manipulating the wind and clouds. Every punch she unleashed was extremely slow, but every single one of these punches was stirring up the entire surrounding space. A vortex that was constructed from cloud and mist gradually began to take shape in the sky. At the same time, her movements gradually sped up, and with every punch she unleashed, the air would tremor violently, and the vortex would also expand slightly. A series of soul rings emerged from beneath her feet, consisting of 2 purples and 4 blacks. A top-grade soul ring configuration for a Soul Emperor. All of a sudden, she raised her head and let loose a long cry. The sound lingered in the air and refused to fade, and the clouds in the sky suddenly descended before being drawn into her fists. Every punch that she unleashed thereafter formed a cloud vortex that was visible to the naked eye, and each successive punch was more powerful than the previous one. The air was trembling violently in the face of her fists, and it seemed that even the mountains in the distance were quaking before her power. Only after around a quarter of an hour did she finally stop what she was doing and allow her hands to hang by her sides in a relaxed manner. However, as a gust of wind blew past, a large plume of powdered stone rose up into the air, and the mountain summit had been lowered by an entire foot. All of this was the result of the impact of her fists. Chapter 1040. That was incredible. I think even boss definitely won't be a match for you now. Words of praise rang out from above, and a rift appeared in the air above, following which a figure descended silently beside her. The person that had been practicing her punches was a young woman. Her appearance was quite ordinary, and she had a tall and slender figure. She wore a metallic grey military uniform with 2 bars and 3 stars on each of her epaulets. Even though her appearance wasn't overly stunning, she was looking very sharp in her military uniform. The person that had just landed beside was a young man who was also wearing the same military uniform, but his epaulets only had 2 bars and 2 stars each. His appearance was also rather ordinary, and he wore a faint smile on his face. Even though he was only standing still on the spot, he still struck one with a sense of surrealism, as if this were only a projection of him rather than his actual body. Do you have that little confidence in him? In that case, I'll tell him about what you said next time he calls us. The female military official said in an indifferent voice. A resigned expression appeared on the young man's face. You can't do this to me. We're family, darling. On a serious note, you really have improved significantly. If you keep progressing like this, when will I ever get to marry you? The woman before him had told him that she could only marry her if he could defeat her, and just the thought of this was making him rather dejected. He had already worked extremely hard. However, not long after the woman had joined the military, she was able to observe the transformations of the clouds and mist in the face of the fierce winds on the mountain summit, then incorporate that into her controlling crane capturing dragon to invent her own soul skill, the divine cloud vortex fists. As a result, she was able to attain enlightenment by fusing with nature, thereby allowing her to instantly make a breakthrough to rank 70 in soul power. If it weren't for the fact that she was currently lacking a soul spirit, she would already be a soul sage now. Ever since she invented her divine cloud vortex fists, her powers had increased by severalfold, and she seemed to have finally found that path that she had been searching for this entire time. Her fists were going to be her ultimate weapons, and she'd already abandoned her pair of massive hammers. That's right, this was none other than Yuan and Yui, who possessed the twin supermartial souls, Titan Giant Ape and Fallen Angel. The man standing beside her was naturally none other than She, and both of them were currently in disguise. The two of them had been at the Northern Legion for a few months now, and Yuan had been promoted to the colonel rank after reaching rank 70 in her soul power. The individual combat prowess that she had displayed had well and truly stunned the entire legion. The martial soul that she reported for herself was the Herculean Divine Ape, the same as that of Marshan in the Blood God Legion. The Herculean Divine Ape was rather similar in appearance to her Titan Giant Ape martial soul, and it would be very difficult for anyone to spot the difference unless they were extremely familiar with the two types of martial souls. She had also been improving very quickly, but he still couldn't compare with Yuan and Yui. However, he was also gradually beginning to find his own path. It was the path of one-shot kills. This was something that he'd only decided on after joining the Legion, and he was currently the vice commander of the reconnaissance battalion, while Yuan and Yui was currently the commander of the battle department, as well as the commander of the Legion Commander's Guard battalion. The Northern Legion was situated in the northernmost region of the continent and was responsible for guarding the northern border. The northernmost region was a place that was impossible for normal humans to live in and adapt to. Furthermore, there was a large number of ice caps here, so humans didn't dare to excessively exploit and develop this place, as doing so could raise the air temperature here, thereby resulting in sea level rising, which would lead to massive disasters all over the continent. The Douluo continent was the northernmost continent among all 3 continents to begin with, so the northernmost region of the continent had always been referred to as a land of mysteries. It was said that there were some extremely powerful soul beasts that lived in the northernmost region, and these soul beasts wouldn't leave this region for no good reason. In order to avoid unnecessary troubles and to guard against the potential emergence of soul beast tides, the Federation had established the Northern Legion here. The conditions in the northernmost region were extremely harsh, and the vast majority of people didn't want to come here. However, the Northern Legion was renowned for its power, and was one of the 8 major legions of the Federation. It had the least number of troops among the 8 major legions, but no one dared to ignore this legion's battle power. The Northern Legion was particularly renowned for its powerful mega squad, and this harsh environment was great for honing one's mental fortitude. So the members of the Northern Legion had always been renowned as tough and unyielding individuals. Who says we're family? You'll have to keep working hard if you want to make it a reality. Yuan and Yui scoffed. Are you saying that your divine cloud vortex fists wouldn't be powerful enough to defeat boss? She made his way over to Yuan with a fawning look on his face as he latched onto her hand. Yuan and Yui allowed him to hold onto her hand, and she nearly rolled her eyes at him in response. She was already accustomed to his thick skin. She held up her hand before him and crooned. Wow, it's really hard to imagine that such a beautiful little hand could unleash such powerful punches. Yuan and Yui immediately withdrew her hand. Can you not be so corny? I'm getting goosebumps. Despite what she was saying, there was a hint of amusement in her eyes. Come to think of it, you've also made it to the final elimination stage of the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition. I wonder what opponent was drawn for you. If possible, it would be best if you didn't encounter boss in the earlier rounds. She said. Yuan and Yui countered. Didn't you just say that I'll be powerful enough to defeat him anyway? A sheepish look appeared on Shishi's face. I was just saying that for the sake of it. Boss is way too good at creating miracles. It would be really bad if both of you were to hurt each other. Are you an idiot? We'll be fighting in the Star Battle.net. No one's actually going to get hurt. That's true. I really am looking forward to seeing your divine cloud vortex fists clash with boss's Golden Dragon King bloodline. Oh, by the way, Zhang Yu didn't make it to the final elimination stage, and he's really down in the dumps. Haha, you make it sound like you made it to the final stage. Don't be sad. You were really close, and there really was a huge element of luck involved at the time, so you can't blame yourself entirely for your loss. Xu Shaoan consoled as she gently swung Yue's Heng Yu's arm from side to side. Yue's Heng Yu wore a dejected look on his face. Luck is also a part of one's power. The heavens have turned its back on me. Why didn't I notice that there was a battle armor fragment on the ground? If I had noticed it, I wouldn't have lost my balance. Could it be that my spiritual power was insufficient, and that's what led to my inability to correctly assess the terrain? Perhaps my opponent even factored that into his calculations. In any case, the fact of the matter is that I lost, and it wasn't like I lost under any unfair circumstances. I'm just really frustrated that I won't be able to face boss and the others in the final stage. I was hoping to show off to everyone just how much I'd improved. Both of them were wearing Lieutenant Colonel epaulets on their shoulders and crisp yellow military uniforms. In terms of official rank, Xu Shaoan's was even above that of Yue's Heng Yu. It was easy to find battle soul masters, but ultra-powerful control system soul masters like her were very rare. Xu Shaoan's absolute control soul skills had stunned the entire Southern Legion, and she had risen up through the ranks at an astonishing rate. They had chosen the Southern Legion as the Legion commander was a member of the Holy Angel clan, which meant that this was essentially the backyard of Yue's Heng Yu's family, so they wouldn't have to be afraid of blowing their covers here. What was making Yue's Heng Yu even more frustrated was that Xu Shaoan had earned her military rank through her own powers, yet his family ties had contributed somewhat to his current military rank. He had planned to prove himself during the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition in order to make himself more worthy of his military rank, but who would have thought that his opponent would turn the tables on him when he'd already gained the upper hand? Xu Shaoan chuckled. Are you already confident enough to think that you can beat boss? Don't forget that he destroyed both you and Shishi the last time you fought him. Ahem, can we not mention that anymore? Speaking of which, after coming here and going through my clan's holy cleansing, my soul power has been purified, and I'm about to form a soul core soon. Once that happens, I'll reach rank 70 in my soul power, and after I fuse with that 100,000-year-old plant system soul beast from boss, I should at least be able to put up a good fight against him. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.